how can you tell when, that internal feeling of discomfort? To be honest, I also feel a little bit of procrastination resistance every time I record a video because it's hard to put yourself out there. Like you have to be in the right mental space. But for me, like I enjoyed enough to overcome that. But my question for you is, how going out of your comfort zone is always uncomfortable and you're going to feel resistant. So how do you know if it's just that kind of fear versus it's not for me?
So this is why experiments are such a powerful way to approach this, because a defining feature of an experiment when scientists conduct them is that you decide in advance for how long you're going to conduct the experiment. It's very important. You just stop in the middle and you're like, actually, I don't want to, you just say, okay, that's the number of trials we're going to have. And we're only going to analyze the data at the end. We're going to withhold judgment until the end. And so that's why it's so powerful, because whether it's experimenting with YouTube or public speaking or writing or anything that might be a little bit outside of your comfort zone, before you start, you say, I'm going to do this for 2 months. I'm going to do this for 6 months. I'm going to do it for 3 weeks. And the reason why my book is called Tiny Experiments is because I recommend to keep it quite small at the beginning. You don't have to go with something really big because you need to complete it. So you finish it. And even if it feels a bit uncomfortable at the beginning, you committed to do this experiment. So you complete it. And at the end, you can decide. And that's when you have enough data. So in my case, I completed the experiment. And even after all these months, I still really didn't like it. So I knew it was not for me.
Oh, I see. I like that you're deciding at the end, not when you're in the middle of it. Because sometimes the middle always feels hard, even if it's something worthwhile.
Yes.
I love that scientific mindset because you're just collecting data, you're just learning.
Yeah, it removes a lot also of the self-judgment. Because you're just trying to learn something new. And if it turns out that the data is saying that this is not your thing, then that's okay. Now you know.
So how long do you recommend people set experiments for?
It really, really depends on the nature of the action. So an experiment, when you design it, you need to choose an action and a duration. So you say, I'm going to do this thing for this specific duration. And if you say, for example, I'm going to experiment with a weekly newsletter, obviously you're not going to run the experiment for 1 week. It needs to be a few weeks, right? So you could say maybe 8 weeks. If you experiment with, I'm going to go to bed at the same time every night, or I'm going to take a 20-minute walk every day, then maybe a couple of weeks is enough for you to collect enough data. So there's no perfect duration, but really the most important thing is to decide before you start, and then you stick to it. That's really the only thing. And you can try to figure out what is a reasonable length of time based on the kind of experiment that I want to conduct here.
Okay. And then after your experiment, what goes into your, I guess, analysis or report?
A lot of people use different ways and methods. And if you follow my work, you'll see I am not very prescriptive, because I do believe in people designing their own systems and really figuring out their own way of doing it. But for people who don't really have a self-reflection practice already, I do share a little tool that I think is very practical, very quick, and that can help you analyze your own data. I call it plus minus next. I'm very good at naming. You'll see the tool has 3 columns. The first column is plus, the second is minus, and the last one is next. And in the first column, you write everything that went well or that went as predicted. In the second column, everything that didn't go so well, that was challenging, that you didn't enjoy. And then in the last column, the next, which I like to write a little arrow here, you write what you want to tweak, what you want to try next, what are your next steps. And those next steps could be based on what you have in the plus and the minus column. That could be, I'm going to actually go a little bigger, a little like more ambitious. Like, for example, I did the weekly video on YouTube and I loved it so much. I'm going to ramp it up and do 2 videos every week now, because actually I love this. Or it could be, I hated this, I'm just stopping. Or, which is completely valid too, and this is sometimes an option that we don't consider, you can keep it the same. If you've been enjoying whatever you're doing right now, don't change anything. And you can say, okay, I did that for 3 months. Let's go for another 3 months. And again, in 3 months, I'm going to check in with myself. I'm going to fill another plus minus next and see if I want to keep it the same, tweak it, or stop it.
Yeah. Wow. I love the very clear chart that you like. I could visualize it already. I have a question for you. Have you ever paused or stopped an experiment? Or do you try not to ever do that?
No, I have, and especially if external circumstances change. So, I had times where my partner got sick and I had to take on more responsibilities, for example, and I think that's completely okay. Really, when you run experiments, it's about being intentional. So if that happens and you're doing your self-reflection and you see in the minus column that actually you feel quite overwhelmed at the moment, there's a lot going on, and maybe you start noticing early signs of burnout, for example, it is a much smarter approach to put in the next column, actually, let's take a little break for the next 2 weeks and we'll pick this back up later on, rather than just pushing through blindly because you said that's what I'm going to do. So yes, you should design your experiments to complete them. And ideally, if you said, I'm going to do this for 6 weeks, do it for 6 weeks. But if in the middle of the 6 weeks something happens, you can take a little break and complete the last 2 weeks a little bit later if that's needed.
Yeah. Okay. So it makes sense. Like you're just basically being aware of how you're feeling and adjusting along with the plan, which makes sense. I wasn't sure how rigid you are with your experiments.
It's this entire, again, really idea of cycles of experimentation, of listening to yourself. And again, just like a scientist, you look at the data, keep looking at the data and keep adjusting your approach based on this. What's really nice too is that if you do it in writing, like I like doing that, doing it in my notes and really writing my plus minus next, is that in the future, if you're hesitating about a decision, a potential career path, or you're not quite sure what to do, you can kind of also look back on your notes and being reminded of why you made that decision, why you started that experiment in the first place, and what was your mindset, your mental space at the time. So there's also something nice about recording it and taking those notes.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people are afraid of uncertainty. Like when you're doing experiments with life, you're exploring new things. There's so much uncertain, right? Like people just fear uncertainty, not knowing what's next, not knowing what they're supposed to do or not having a clear goal. How do you advise people to like embrace the unknown rather than be afraid of it?
First thing I think that's very, very important is understand why, in the first place, we're scared of uncertainty. And it makes a lot of sense from an evolutionary perspective if you just put yourself back, just think about when we were in the jungle and we didn't know if there was something in the lurking in the bushes that wanted to eat us. The more information you had and the more certainty you had about the environment around you, the more likely you were to survive, right? So we love having a sense of certainty. And whenever we feel uncertain, this is why we have this fear. But what we need to realize is that the world has changed a lot. And it is very unlikely that when you're in a space of uncertainty, this is actually going to kill you or something's going to eat you, right? It might be uncomfortable. And your brain hasn't changed that much, right? So your brain is still trying to figure out and having this sense of certainty, but you're more or less safe, right? So that's the first thing, is just not having this sense of self-judgment if you feel fear in a space of uncertainty. This is just your brain being your brain, and that's completely normal. Everybody experiences the same thing. Because sometimes we have this, I really like this concept of the double arrow in Buddhism, where we have the initial suffering of the uncertainty, and then we add suffering by just throwing a second arrow to ourselves because we judge ourselves for being scared. So accept that this is completely okay. And then second, once you've accepted that uncertainty in any case is going to be here, you can decide to change your relationship to it and say, okay, it's here. Everybody faces the exact same uncertainty and everybody faces this fear. How can I actually reimagine my relationship to it? Uncertainty, when you think about it, is actually amazing because it means that you don't know what's next, which means
Yeah.
that anything is possible. So you can try different things. You can play with ideas. You can start different projects. You can reach out to new people, and you can really explore the space of uncertainty, almost like if you were in a video game and you're exploring a new map. So I would really recommend having this more playful approach where you see uncertainty more as an opportunity to grow and to explore it rather than something that's going to trigger fear in you.